Hey folks, good morning. How's it going? If you can hear me, please say something in the chat so I know that everything's working all right. It is Wednesday, October 26th. It's about 8:20. I tried to start a minute ago, but I had to delete it because there was problems with stuff. So um yeah, I try to get myself all organized so that I've got all my notes and things highlighted that I definitely want to make sure I put out there on my podcast here. And then I also just like to be spontaneous and, look for you guys. Hey, Phantasmic Ether and Pixie Knickers, you guys are awesome. So one of the first things I want to say, thank you, Phantasmic Ether. Hey, Mrs. Kelly. Hey, Brenda. Is let's ungaslight, right? That is like the most brilliant thing that Phantasmic Ether shared with us yesterday. The little slogan, Justice A to Z, where to ungaslight yourself. I mean, this whole motherfucking case is so much gaslighting. It is unreal. You cannot see the forest through the trees. And isn't that poetic that this all allegedly happened in the forest? I mean, should we just start at the top? Like, we don't know that that party ever happened. Party, you know, there could have been a gathering. Um, there's so many rabbit holes to fall into, and I hate falling into rabbit holes. Mm. Oh, I can't wait to hear from CNY after that Megan Diabolical live. I was just listening to part of that. It's so hard. There's so much great stuff you want to catch. Um, and then, for me, I'm trying to put together a new show because I feel like we got to keep the momentum moving forward. That's like what I was just saying about falling down the rabbit hole. We don't want to fall backwards. We don't want to get confused and clobbered. And we can't trust anybody, especially the catfish crew. Even somebody with good intentions from the other side, they're pretty confused. They have been gaslit. They've been living in a gaslighting facade. I mean, we've all seen small town crap, and, you know, this whole thing is just so out of control. So let me say, everything I say is my opinion only. It's purely for the sake of discussion and it's speculation and hopefully educational and entertaining, or or both, one or the other, at least one, hopefully the other. They've been huffing those fumes. Damn, I believe it. Well, and not to be at all judgmental for anybody who uses medicinal THC or self-medicates with that. I used to self-medicate with that for my anxiety and such, and just dealing with PTSD and just not being ready to deal with it. So I understand, and I don't think that that makes anybody any lesser, or there's just no judgment there. But if you have used that stuff before, it can fog your brain. And this is an area where it's 100% legal and it is in abundance. And it's just like sugar or alcohol or cigarettes or caffeine. You don't want to use these things disproportionately to the point that it's, interacting with or interfering with your ability to live a healthy life. So personally, I think that that's a lot of what's going on, is that we've got, these folks up in the beautiful Sierras of California, high off of life, high off of pot. And, then there's other substances involved too. You got the whole thing with the money. My God, the money, the haves and the have nots. And that's everywhere, right? That's just life. But imagine in this place where you have billionaires. Like we're talking Mark Zuckerberg just bought a place there, right? And then we're learning more and more about this Hambrick dynasty. I mean, talk about a dynasty, right? Um, then we've got Kylie Rodney's family, and I want to apologize. I spoke of her granddad yesterday in the past tense, and I have no idea why I did that. I caught it when I was watching it later, and I was like, that's stupid. Why did I say was? Is. He is a very remarkable man, it sounds like, right? He's just extremely independent, extremely intelligent, and motivated, and in my estimation, he sounds like a huge threat to the Truckee way. So that was my point. And I totally didn't mean to talk about him in the past tense. Hopefully everything's fine with him. I'm like, uh-oh, was I catching something? If you know what I mean. So there's a lot that I wanted to cover today, and I see all your awesome comments, and thank you so much for being here, you guys. I just can't get over how much Mark Zuckerberg's house, like 31 million. Well, that's cheap, isn't it? I mean, these people are so off the chain, just so off the chain. Having been there, having been around, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, um, Chicago, like the North Shore of Chicago. I hung out in Boston. There's areas around Ohio that are just outrageous. I mean, every state has their mega filthy rich. There's a lot of them in Florida too. And I'm sure, I mean, you got Texas. I mean, I could just go on, right? But the point is that you've got people who have way too much money who are going to be into all kinds of heinous shit. And let me just throw it in there right off the top. This place that keeps coming up, Monte Rio. Like, I don't even want to know. I kept hearing that coming up here and there again and again. And I would just kind of block it out. I'm like, it doesn't sound like anything I want to think about. It sounds like a rabbit hole I don't want to look at. So, of course, I had to Google it. Mm. And I don't know. I do not know. I've never been to Monte Rio. I've barely ever heard of it until this case. But what it sounds like is that it has been brought up again and again as a potential to where somebody like Kylie could be taken for trafficking. That it's like a gentleman's club. I hate that term because it's more like a dirtbag thug club, a goon club, in my opinion. Oh my god. Kind of like the thing you'd see in The Sopranos, right? When they go to the titty bar. I mean, that was always I loved The Sopranos, but that was always the hardest part for me to watch, and I don't feel like I'm a prude, I just like to be reasonable, you know? To me, that crap is unreasonable. So Monte Rio is a, thug scumbag gentleman's club, it sounds like, in Napa Valley. So, for anybody who doesn't know Napa Valley, it's where all the wine is made. It's sort of considered like the Disneyland of getting drunk. I mean, there's that amazing movie. Is it called Wine Country? Or no, it's called Sideways. It's called Sideways. With Thomas Hayden Church and Paul Gimiano. Anyway, he won an Oscar for it. And so did Sandra Oh, I think. It was an amazing movie. It's called Sideways. Thomas Hayden Church plays this massive jerk. Paul Giamatti, there's his name, and Sandra Oh, before she got all famous. That movie kind of explained a bad trip in Napa, kind of similar to Vegas, but fancy, right? What was that Johnny Depp movie? Oh my God, the one where they go to Vegas and they're like face melt and stuff. They're like on LSD the whole time. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So again, looking at the proximity of where Truckee is, part of Tahoe, right by Reno, right an hour from Sacramento, which is complete gangster land. And I'm not saying that in a judgmental way. It's just, it is. Um, and then, right there on Interstate 80 that you have to go through there to go from the east to the west or from the west to the east. It's not too far from Vegas. A lot of people will skip right over Reno because they just think that's too dinky and go straight to Vegas. But my point is that it's a high trafficking area, right? And then you've got these ridiculously wealthy people, and then you've got people, your regular people that are struggling and that can fall prey to um, basically be victimized in that handmaid's tale kind of way. I mean, that's an excessive extreme, but just to paint a picture. It sounds like that's the nut that's getting cracked open with the Kylie Rodney case. And we don't know the specifics if Kylie Rodney just had some shitty friends that basically did her in. We don't know if that could have been staged so that she could be trafficked. We just don't know. And even if, let's just say that, she drove herself into that water, this case is bringing to light these realities that none of us want to really think about, but we kind of feel like it's a good thing too, because we know that people get victimized like this, right? Mm. Charlotte Green says, finally caught you live. Doesn't happen often. Okay, so I want to focus on the things that I think are really important to talk about today. What I was just saying um, about the possibility of trafficking, right? And again, whether Kylie's been trafficked or not, just discussing trafficking in general to help anybody who's victimized like that. Because, oh my God, what a horrible, horrible thing. And, I think once in a while we hear these stories of people who've escaped and survived like that for a decade. It's extremely rare. Most missing people are deceased, unfortunately. Um, and the ones that are being trafficked are probably never going to resurface, honestly, right? I hate to say that, but it's true. But there's hope. There is hope. People do resurface and live to talk about it. It's just extremely rare. Right, Handmaid's Tale was mom's profile picture. I know, I know. So my first question I want to ask you guys, and I try to stay focused on asking questions because I don't have the answers. If I did, I'd share them with you in a heartbeat, or I'd say, "Hey, I think I have the answer," but I'm here to ask questions. And of course I'll answer questions too if I think that I might be able to, and I will be totally upfront and honest with you to the extent that I think that I have actual knowledge or just an educated guess or something like that. Um, so, my question for you guys is, what if Sammy had spilt the tea early in her interviews when people like Tony Dodge and Fox News interviewers asked her straight up, what do you think might have happened? And this is probably a pretty direct quote of hers. Honestly, my biggest fear, oh, I got to do that. Honestly, my biggest fear is that somebody took her. They said that they would give her a ride home, and they didn't give her a ride home. And for all we know, she could be on the other side of the world right now. Right? So, we kind of thought that was a red herring, possibly. And it's quite possible that I'm not saying it's probable. I'm saying it's a possibility that she could be on the other side of the world right now. And that, Sammy might have kind of spilt the tea by saying that. Um, Myself, and I think a lot of people that watch my channel are probably more suspicious that Sammy kicked her ass and accidentally killed her or had a premeditated situation. And I'm not trying to throw shade on anybody, and this is just my opinion, but it's my opinion that I've formulated off of the evidence that has been put forth. And a lot of it, like I said yesterday, is just her attitude and the way she talks, the way she's like way too excited to get all the attention, the way she wants to say, I was the last person to see her. I was the last person to talk to her. I'm the person with all the answers. I'm the person with all the information. I'm your go to. I mean, she couldn't possibly be more narcissistic, in my opinion. Just me, my, I. Right? I mean, here we have a missing person, and she's just like, it's the Sammy show. Michaela, am I saying that right? Charlotte, oh wow, was he in chat or was she showing a video of Nate H on her live stream? I definitely haven't heard of it. Um, okay, Squirrels on Fire, the video with Nate H in it. I haven't seen that yet, Charlotte. If you want to put where that is, he was on video promoting a group gateway and something that helps kids on drugs. Oh, how nice of him. So this whole gateway thing sounds like part of a cult type of thing, potentially a cult. Um, and yeah, who better to manipulate than people addicted to drugs who need your help, who are vulnerable? That is a very common way to recruit victims. So, having studied psychology and having a master's degree in psychology, um, there is a lot of uh, kind of religious belief that is separate from psychology, but people who are very religious, kind of orthodox, can see psychology as like a witchcraft or a religion of its own. But there is this weird intersection, especially in the San Francisco Bay Area, Northern California, which is where I got my degree. There's this really weird intersection of um, kind of these like self-help groups that really are cults or gateways to cults. So they are kind of screening them. They might have like a 10-day retreat, self-help kind of thing. Some of those are legit and some of those are good. I'd say the more legit good ones are probably like 2 days. Um, but that's just in my experience. Anyway, it's been for decades that I know of a huge problem in the Bay Area with these essentially brainwashing types of things. So that's my first guess when you talk about that Nate H thing. And yeah, I've seen that with the lodge and with yeah, it looks like it could be like a cute little artsy self-help celebrating femininity kind of thing, but it quickly gets funky potentially. So, you know, it I don't trust those things, especially in this scenario in this town with these people. I don't trust any of it. Um, my biggest indicator that something is up is that this poor Miss Kylie Rodney was dead or missing before her 17th birthday, and the people there just don't seem to give a fuck. I don't like that. And that's a huge red flag. They're just like, oh, yeah, it's a bummer. Let's get on with the show. That's not going to work for the rest of us. And it's really not going to work for Truckee either. One of Megan's messages yesterday, I caught some of it on Squirrels on Fire, was, oh, people, come to Truckee, come to Tahoe, give us your money. It's all going to be fine. Don't worry. Everything's fine. You know, it ain't fine. And I'm sure some people won't be paying attention and will just go ahead and act like it's a regular ski season, but I think it's going to affect them. I think a lot of people are going to be like, maybe we'll go to Vail this year. Maybe we'll go to Aspen. Maybe we'll go to Big Sur. I mean, Big Sur is not skiing, is it? That's on the coast. What's the other one? Big Bear, I can't remember. I've never have skied in Southern California. There's I might think of it anyway. There's a lot of other places to ski. They're not as great as Tahoe, but if you go over to Idaho, Colorado, you got Sun Valley. There's a lot of options. And, even if you have a free place to stay at Tahoe, like I had shared with you guys yesterday that I did, we had a free place to stay on the lake with a hot tub, with everything. And you still spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on your equipment and your ski passes and then you want to go out to dinner and all that jazz. It's a lot of money. And most people that ski there don't just ski a couple of times a year. It's addictive. They go there as often as they can. We were some of those people that would just work really hard Monday through Friday. I was in graduate school. I would bust my butt so that I would have no homework so that we could just cut loose for the weekend. And a lot of people live like that in the Bay Area, especially because it's such a fast-paced lifestyle and there's so much fun to be had and there's so much work to do. So there are a lot of people that have that mindset and they'll even just make it a 4-day work week and they will just like not get a lot of sleep, not do anything except work and study Monday through Thursday. And their weekend starts Thursday night and it goes all the way till Monday morning. There's a lot of very successful people that live like that. I'm not one of them. I need my sleep. I like shorter work days. I like more balance in my daily life. But it amazed me how much I could get done in a 5-day week so that I could completely take off for the weekend and not have to like study and write papers and read and stuff like that. Um, so anyway, my point is that people spend a lot of freaking money. We spent so much money there. I was in graduate school. We didn't have the money, but you do it, right? And this is how a place like Truckee exists. And you have your working class that survives off of that income. And I heard Megan yesterday saying, oh, well, we've got, wakeboard, water skiing. We've got all these other activities when it's not winter. It's not like that. It's not like our economy is just built off of the snow. Yeah, it is. That's bullshit. Yes, they do have other great activities, but you take the population in Tahoe on a busy weekend summer day, and it's going to be probably like 100th of the population in Tahoe on a busy weekend in the winter. I mean, it's nothing. It doesn't compare. It probably helps make ends meet between ski seasons, but it's not like it's a thing, it's just not. I, in my humble opinion. So I'm sure there's people that can argue that, but basically what I'm saying is that entire economy there, other than the filthy rich like the Zuckerbergs and the Hambricks, the entire economy is built around people coming to ski and snowboard. And so here we are at the end of October, and I believe they're hoping to get their ski season underway on November 3rd. I don't know why it's a little bit early this year, maybe just some weather forecasts. But I was really struck yesterday by the 2011, where they say they got 600 inches of snow. I looked that up. I had to convert that into feet. It's like 50 feet. I didn't hear about that. Can you imagine living in a lodge far away from the closest paved road and then having a winter with 50 inches of snow? I mean, that's seriously like the Donner Party situation. I don't want to like always be going that direction either. Squirrels on fire. Let it be known that if something happens to you, all of these crime communities will know who did it, and life as they know it will be over. Oh, are you here, Squirrels on Fire? I was just watching your show from yesterday and it was so hard to turn it off to come on, but I really wanted to come on. So thanks. There she is, Squirrels on Fire. She is literally special education. Oh, are you talking about Megan? So sorry, I've missed a whole bunch of this. November 18th is a ski start date. Okay, thank you for the clarification. I was like, I had seen November 3rd a few weeks ago, and I was like, how could that be? That seems so early. November 18th is much more realistic, it sounds like. But you just never know with the weather too. So, sometimes they plan on an opening ski season for November 18th and it don't happen. And that's a huge disappointment. They want to get this thing rolling as quickly as possible every year. It's a huge push. So if they have themselves organized to open on a certain weekend, and they got to be smart, they can't be inaccurate. People won't be happy with that, and they will go ski in Sun Valley or Vail or Aspen instead. I mean, most of those people are so filthy rich. They even have their own jets, right? I mean, look at John Benet Ramsey's family in Colorado. You know, they were about to hop into their jet on Christmas morning to go to like Boston, or was it to go skiing? It might have been, I can't remember. Anyway, for people who don't know, John Benet Ramsey, we all know who that is. We all know that she was found dead on Christmas morning, but they'd had a party with 2,000 people at their house the day before for Christmas Eve, and they were about to hop on their private jet to go somewhere for Christmas. I can't remember where they were going. I'm sure somebody knows and can put it in the comments. Um, mm, what do you mean if something happened, Charlotte? So here I am just jumping in, but I'm going to guess that Charlotte is talking about Squirrels on Fire, being concerned if something does happen to me, then y'all released a lot of truths. Hopefully nothing will happen to any of us, but this is exactly how the mob works, right? People are afraid if they speak out, they might just disappear. I like to say Karen Silkwooded because that's how old I am, right? In the 70s, I think Cher starred as Karen Silkwood in a movie that was really, really good and just shows that when you're a whistleblower, you sometimes get disappeared, and that's fucked up. And I'm not one of these people that can let that silence me. Honestly, truly, I would rather speak the truth and suffer the consequences, although, fingers crossed that nothing like that ever happens. But if you're too scared to speak the truth, you're living in a fucking prison that is not right. It's not right no matter what country you're in the world, but especially our country, that too many people, like my own grandfather and other relatives close in my family, have fought with their lives to protect our rights in this country for freedom of speech and so many other things, right? It's so essential. And I kind of described this a little bit, and Squirrels on Fire and other YouTubers can speak to this. But starting your YouTube channel is really exercising your freedom of speech. And I didn't realize that. Again, I would have started it a lot sooner because I'm all about freedom of speech. And I do feel like I have some things to say. And I appreciate people that think that too. I think a lot of us have things to say, and it's hard to take the time to listen to everybody and speak your truth too. But I mean, that's my goal. I like to hear what people have to say. There's a lot of great opinions out there. And let me just add, I heard some douchebag on some interview show that I'm not going to mention the name of, these two white dudes talking. And they're just like, yeah, YouTube is great. There's such a magic to YouTube. But the problem is these people express their opinions and then they're saying bad things about people. And that's just not good. And they need to shut up, I think. Literally, they're like saying, I don't want to hear what these people think because I think that what they think and what they say is damaging. And you know what? Speaking for myself, because I can really only speak for myself, I try really hard to keep it positive, as you guys know, to not say anything unnecessary. But when somebody is suspicious, when there's sus, you got to call it out. You know, I mean, yeah, these people that are young adults that are 18, and yeah, if they're under 18, it makes it a lot harder because you do want to be more protective because they're not old enough to be wise enough. And let's see, you going live today, Squirrels on Fire? I'm sure she is. I never take the light from lives that are voicing the right messages. Oh, you're so cute. That woman, her family aren't gone anymore. You're saying you don't think you're hearing from an imposter? Oh, like an imposter, Megan? Um, Megan was saying that she has people posing as her every day, so she like changes her screen name every day. Thank you, Jen. That's really nice of you to say. You're very professional. I try to keep it real, and I am trying to keep things on the up and up. And I feel like I have some insider knowledge that people don't share. Like, let me tell you a really goofy story about the courts. Okay, when I worked in the courts, There's a lot of things in the courts that nobody ever says to anybody, and you only know it if you know it. So, um, and it's probably still like this. This was 20 years ago when I worked in the courts in Seattle, and I learned these things, and I was just like, "What? Why doesn't anyone tell you this?" Okay, men have to wear suits in court, and they not only have to wear suits with ties, and they'll always tell you, "Oh, you're free to dress however you want," but that's a lie, unless you really just want to lose your case. So if you're a guy, you have to wear a suit with a tie, right? And jacket, the sports jacket. The jacket is key. And this is the goofy thing that so many people don't know. The jacket is key because every time you sit down, when you're a guy in a court with your jacket, every single time you sit down, you unbutton that button so that your jacket sits better when you're, like this. So it's more flat, right? So it's not all bunched up. But that's not really why you unbutton it. You unbutton it because when you stand up to address the judge, you better button that fucking button or you are toast. And most people have no idea that that's what's going on. So if you didn't go to law school or you haven't observed or somebody didn't tell you, because people won't tell you, you have to observe it for yourself, or have a lawyer in the family. It's just a given. There's so many bizarre little things like that. It's like a club. So if you don't know to unbutton your button and to stand up and button it for the judge to demonstrate to them that you're showing them respect with that ridiculous little button, that is like, there's so much stuff like that in life that nobody is ever going to tell you. Squirrels on Fire says, yes. I don't know if that's what she's referring to, or something else. So yeah, it's like a special handshake. So thank you. Squirrels on Fire, you've been in a court. And sometimes, like, it's people that might have different jobs in the court, like, I mean, the transcriptionists. Oh my god, those transcriptionists are like freaking amazing, and they make so much money, and they never ever ever say a word, right? And you would think in this day and age you don't need that anymore because everything you can videotape or audio tape, but it is so old school. So old school. And maybe we have a transcriptionist in our chat. So yeah, they have to go to school for a long time to learn that crazy shorthand with the little typewriter that has like 10 keys. Oh my God. And they're just like, you don't even notice them, right? Because they're just always there and they're always doing their thing. They never speak. They never say hello. They never say goodbye. They're like machines. So that's a whole nother thing. But as a woman in this day and age, here we are, 2022. Women sometimes wear dresses and sometimes wear skirts and sometimes wear pants. No, you don't wear pants into the court unless you want to lose your case. And I say that very tongue in cheek because I've seen female lawyers wear pants and win their cases, but they have to be extra, extra skilled because when you put your pants on as a woman, you're defying the authority of dudes, and you just don't do that, even if your judge is a woman. Some of the women in situations like that, like sheriffs, coroners, public administrators, sergeants, judges, some of the women are worse than the men when it comes to that old school sexist handmaid's tale type of crap. Okay, I said it. I said all the things that nobody is ever supposed to say, right? Mm, authority doesn't like a strong woman, right? And they will knock you off your pedestal. Absolutely. So you got to wear the skirt, and it's got to be below the knee. I remember Ally McBeal. You guys remember that show? She was so cute. She was so spunky and outspoken, and she wore that skirt that was like shorter than short, kind of like the skirt that Sammy and the friend wore to Kylie Rodney's memorial service or celebration of life. You don't wear skirts that almost show your underpants if you're wearing them. You don't wear skirts that short in court. You don't wear skirts that short to a memorial service. You wear a skirt that short, like, to the beach or to a club. Ally McBeal was a great lawyer character, and I think she always won her cases, didn't she? She was brilliant, and her whole little squad was brilliant. But it just cracked me up the way they pretended that you could wear short skirts like that and get away with it, because it better hit your knee at the minimum. Is the pants just for lawyers and court employees, or for parties too? That's such a great question, Phantasmic Ether, and it depends if you want to win your case or not. It's for everybody. It's absolutely for everybody. And they will tell you, even your very own lawyer representing you that's getting paid will tell you, oh, you can wear whatever you want, just dress comfortably, dress casually. What they mean is dress to the nines like it's Easter Sunday church, okay? It's just this bizarre freaking double speak, right? From 1984. Oh, yeah, just wear whatever you want, just make sure you're comfortable. You're gonna be really uncomfortable if you're, like, wearing, like, what I'm wearing. So, why won't they just tell you, like, dress the fuck up, be comfortable. I mean, it's really important to be comfortable in your clothes. That's a whole nother story, like, not just the style of your clothes, but the actual physical comfort. If you have something binding, like your jacket or your pants or your shoes, it's gonna ruin your day, and when you're in a trial, it's more stressful than anything you've ever done in your entire life, and it's like running a marathon, and your body is freaking out. It's all emotional, and you're trying to, like, stay on the straight and narrow. So something like tight shoes or tight pants or anything like that is going to be a monkey wrench. It's going to really hose up your day and your thought process. So yes, it is important to be comfortable, but it's also important to be dressed very professionally and not fancy, nothing sparkly. Um, all of your, like, jewelry and your hair and your shoes, go with, like, navy blue. That's the safest color. Like dark gray, navy blue, brown, taupe, mauve. You don't want to do black. It's a little bit too much. It's a little too dramatic, but like a charcoal gray is good. But anyway, so that's all, like, the court inside knowledge, right? And I'm very happy to share that stuff with you guys. I've wanted to, but it hasn't come up. It almost did the last few days. So there, I've shared it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But again, if you're a guy, remember to unbutton and button. And if you don't have a sports jacket, you have to borrow one. It's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So really what you're doing is you're showing respect. And if you show any disrespect, even by accident, to the judge, they will shoot your case down. It's a very personal, egotistical pile of crap. And it really does go right into the politics of a place like Truckee, because the judges and the lawyers, they all know each other. They're not supposed to. If they have a conflict of interest, they're supposed to tell you that. They're supposed to say, well, I go to play golf with them on Sundays, so we can't really do this. I can't represent you. But the smaller the town is, the more impossible it's going to be to get a situation with no conflict of interest. But even in a big city like New York, Los Angeles, Boston, Houston, Chicago, these people, they all run in packs together. So they have to disclose if they're, like, married to the other person, but they don't always. But they all know each other. Trust me, they all go to the same Christmas parties. They all golf together. It's crazy. It's so crazy. Misogyny is why Pantsuit Nation became a thing. So infuriating. I love the way you describe things, Justice. Well, thank you. I've lost a lot my own just for the way I've dressed. So have you been, like, in court because of, like, custody or, like, crimes? I know you said that you're in recovery, and congratulations on that. But yeah, there's so much to it, and a lot of times, the fix is in. That's what, an All-American Cartel says at the beginning of his shows. You know, the fix is pretty much always in. With a court case, you pretty much always know who's gonna win. It's, like, depends who is friends with who, and, uh who wears the wrong outfit. But even before you get there, it's kind of like the fix is in, and then they go through the whole process and they drag it out because that's how they make their money. But our system is so messed up, and lawyers are the ones who know exactly how messed up it is because they see it every day. And then there's people like us that we see how messed up it is, and we have no idea how messed up it is because it's like a club. You can't get in, and no one's going to tell you these things. And then when you have court, like a custody battle, um, it's just terrible that nobody tells you how much you have to have the right lawyer, you have to have the right outfit, you have to have the right attitude. Um, if you don't, you're just completely toe up. Yep, I've lost my own just for the way I've dressed, Squirrels on Fire says, but the second you dress like a yuppie, you'll be fine. I know, it's so stupid. Criminal cases, cool. Usually me being subpoenaed for state versus blank, whatever. Me usually with the state. Yeah, and court's really nerve-wracking. It's just a weird thing, especially if you're testifying. I mean, it's weird just to be in a court because you're not allowed to do anything except drink water. That's it. And you better not be drinking too much water. But you got to stay quiet. Um, it's very challenging and it's very boring. And you have to just, buckle down and get through it. Um, but testifying is the worst. They start with asking you things like your name, and that's such a hard one. When you're up there on the stand, you're just like, oh my God, I know this question. I know the answer. I mean, I'm kidding, but I'm not kidding. Right? Squirrels on fire. Yep. Warm water, tap water. Oh, gross. I hope they have filtered water these days. That's disgusting. And yeah, they put it usually in these weird, like, coffee pots. So those are always on the table filled with water for the lawyers and the defendants and you know, like coffee pots of water, really? I mean, these days you can have your clear plastic bottle, but that might lose your case. God. You drink out of the weird plastic coffee pot, like kind of like what they have on the table at like a Waffle House or IHOP. You're cracking me up. Squirrels on fire. You are cracking me up. Okay, so yeah, 10 years of custody garbage. Oh, I'm so sorry. That is the freaking worst. With my ex, never ending stress. And it's just so sexist. I mean, if women did the things that men do, they'd be put in jail immediately. As a woman, you're just under so much more scrutiny. And, again, it really is like the Handmaid's Tale. Um, Powder coffee. Oh my God. Ew. And the powder creamer. That's the shit I really can't stand. Cannot stand it. But yeah, like I said, the things that men do, like look at Sheriff Wu. Now, if Sheriff Moon did what Sheriff Wu has done, do you think she'd still have her job? Or do you think she might be in jail? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the answer is in the question, right? So, let me talk briefly about the breeders, okay? Just go straight from all that Handmaid's Tale court crap to the band, the breeders, because I've been talking about bands a lot the last couple of days with Nirvana and the whole Capitol Hill scene and all the band members that died in a 2-year period right there on Capitol Hill. Like, probably all of those deaths happened within like the same square mile or two. And, so they were all the same coroner. And I'll never, ever, ever Like, this is stuff that, yeah, you will get uh, a target on your back. So I'm going to be very careful. But all those cases that I discussed, all with the same coroner. You'll never guess who that coroner might have been sleeping with, and I'm just gonna leave it right there and hop right over to, the Breeders, okay? So, the Breeders was a small alternative little band from Ohio and Boston. They moved around, and it was a couple of chicks. I gotta tell you the story because it's so cute, and even if you're a Breeders fan, you might not know this. Um, the chicks were identical twins. So Kim Deal and Kelly Deal. And um, Kim was in a band called the Pixies, and Kelly was an engineer. And Kim was in a creative disagreement with someone in the Pixies. She was not the lead singer, she was the lead guitarist. And she had the song that she wanted to write and perform. And the lead of the Pixies was like, no, I don't think so. So she was like, fine, okay, I'm going to go start my own band. I'm out of here. I got to do this song. And they were like, yeah, right. So she called up her twin sister and she said, hey, Kelly, quit your job and be in my band. And Kelly said, okay. And then they had this amazing chick from the other side of the pond. And then they had some local dude. And the four of them did Cannonball. That was the song. That was the song that put them on the map. Like, they had no idea how famous that song was going to make them. And then Kurt Cobain discovered them and had them open up for Nirvana a couple of times, and they took off. They became household names, even with a weird ass Handmaid's Tale type of name like the Breeders. So they've been a successful band ever since. Probably with COVID, they all probably had to get like regular day jobs to just keep paying their bills. I think it was right before COVID that they had done a free concert. But anyway, I'm sure we have some Breeders fans out there, and it's just so cute the way they're sisters. And they, they've struggled with addiction too. I spoke about that with Stephanie Sargent and Kristen Pfaff and Kurt Cobain. All those musicians struggled with heroin addiction. And the problem with having ever struggled with heroin addiction is that if anybody ever wants you to be unalived, they can pretend that you had a relapse. It's just like the easiest thing in the world to do, and nobody will question it because people are always like, oh yeah, heroin is so dangerous. We've heard that. So Kristen Pfaff and Stephanie Sargent had both been in rehab. I think both of the twin sisters and the Breeders have. I know for sure Kelly has. um, and they've turned their lives around. And um, Kristen Pfaff and Stephanie Sargent had turned their lives around, and there were no signs that they had relapsed. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is highly unlikely. And so that's the problem with having a history like that. If you're in a situation where somebody wants to silence you, it's really easy to set that up. So remember with Kurt Cobain that a month before he overdosed and then blew his head off, he overdosed on roofies in Rome. And they barely were able to save his life, but they were able to, obviously. I don't know how many days he was in a coma in a hospital in Rome. I think it was like 5 or something like that. And then a month later, he had overdosed on so much heroin that like he would have been dead like 5 times over, I think, before the needle was even like empty. But he had the wherewithal to, make sure that he wasn't going to get saved that time. So I'm like speaking in code, right? Smash that like. Thank you, Squirrels on Fire. Yes, I always forget. I always remember to say the part about my opinion only. And I always forget to say, please hit the like button and the subscribe button and share if you feel like those are things you want to do. It does so much for the channel. And, I always say it's not about the money. I really don't care if I never make a dime with this. And if I, even have to shell out money to keep it going is absolutely fine with me. I'm just like that type of person that nothing is about the money to me. As long as I have my bills paid, and I'm really happy to have that, as you guys know, I have 4 kids, so it's a challenge, but I'm 55, so we've lived in the same house for 10 years, I think. And, things have mellowed out. So that's really, really nice. And it's really nice when you can do things. Like, I was even thinking, if I do make money with this channel, maybe I'll just like start a foundation for women who've been trafficked, or, join up with the Gabby Petito Foundation or something like that. I don't want to make any promises because I might just have to get a house in Tahoe right on the water. You just never know, right? You ever meet original Nirvana drummer Chad? I have not. No. I steered so clear of them when they came to my college and played, and Kurt was falling down drunk. And um, I started to mention the other day, Beck and Nirvana were both kind of getting their start in Olympia at the same time. They both never really say it. Nirvana said that they were a Seattle band, and Beck was more like a Los Angeles band, Orange County band. But they were both doing their grunge thing in their garages in Olympia at the same time. And I never met Beck either, but I loved Beck. And at the time, you had to take your pick. Like, if you lived in Olympia, you weren't allowed to be a fan of both. It was one or the other. It sounds so funny, but it's so true. There's just all these rules that nobody knows about. Um, Met Grohl at Sub Pop Shop. Man, I am a huge fan of Dave Grohl and Foo Fighters. I mean, Foo Fighters did they've just done very well for themselves after losing Kurt. The Gits tried to do that. Joan Jett even tried to like help the Gits and sing for the Gits. I don't want to say replace Mia, because you're never going to. But the Gits pretty much split up after she was murdered. And she's the only one of those 4 that you can say definitively was murdered. And they tried to set it up, they tried to stage it, in my opinion, to look like a serial killer, when really it looked like the cover of the Nirvana album that came out 3 months later, 2.5 months later. And it wasn't until last year or 2 years ago that I put that together, and I was like, oh. So if you watch the Courtney and Kurt and Courtney movie that journalist from the BBC put together, and the one punk rock lead singer who was just like drunk all the time, he had a name like Diablo. I think that was his name, Diablo. I forget the name of the band. Like, they're like a really sexist, violent type of punk rock band that, I don't want to remember the name of them anyway. But Diablo was interviewed in that movie, and then he was decapitated 2 days later. So I'm, like I said, I just like I'll get hit on it, and then I'll just like go the other direction. So I don't know what Love Bone is, if that's like a band. Oh, you're so sweet. Amazing mentor, Justice. Again, ruled tragic accidents or suicides. Right. All of those. All 3 of the others of those 4. Grunge music hasn't been the same since Kurt. My fave by him is Come As You Are. And that's the slogan for Aberdeen. It's so cute. They have that on like their little like road signs for the city of Aberdeen. My favorite of Nirvana is the Meat Puppets, the live unplugged Meat Puppets. Nirvana Unplugged. That's my favorite. Oh my God, Kurt does the Meat Puppets song better than the other Kurt from the Meat Puppets. I mean, holy crap. That's some shit, baby. Ain't that some shit? Isn't that something Ryan Upchurch says? See, I'm a new Ryan Upchurch fan. I only met Upchurch through this case. So, I don't want to frustrate people that are like, man, would she shut up about the music? Because Kylie was all about the music. Kylie was all about the music. That was her thing. I mean, how cute just growing up with her father, I mean, her grandfather, performing out there at the lodge and, um, you know, just my goodness. I mean, the songs from when she was little to when she was older, the it's just it's so hard for me to listen to because it's just so upsetting. It's such a loss. It's such a loss, just like Kurt Cobain was such a loss, and just like, in my opinion, River Phoenix was one of the biggest losses that my generation had, as a young actor who died way too early. Again, another overdose, another accident. I mean, who knows? There's so many cases that can be looked into. So I want to address that too, because I don't feel like any of us are just like, oh, well, let's just obsess on Kylie Rodney because we don't have anything better to do, right? I mean, we all have full lives. There's so many other cases to focus on. This one speaks to us because we feel connected to Kylie or her story for whatever reason, right? Um, and some of these cases right now that are hot and need attention, and I honestly don't know that I'll be able to focus on them because I need to focus on Kylie Rodney. But I'm going to put the names out there in case anybody is better at focusing on two at the same time or something like that. I mean, some of these channels, they focus on like 8 or 20 at the same time. So I give them a lot of credit, even if they don't go as deep as some of the other channels might. But some of them go as deep and they're still focusing on multiple channels, but they probably have all kinds of special skills and work histories that they're not even talking about. And they might have like a whole crew of people working behind the scenes that they're not talking about. Because honestly, most of the creators have somebody helping them, not just a mod, but people that look stuff up. You know, there's a lot of people that love to help. And you know, they don't want to be on the channel. They don't want any credit. They just want to look stuff up and do the sleuthing. There's a lot of cyber sleuthers out there. And for anybody who hasn't tried it yet, it can be fun. It can be annoying, but it can be so fun because you're digging and you're digging and you're digging. You're not finding what you're looking for, but then you find this whole other gold mine. And then you do find what you're looking for. But then you're like, holy crap, look what I happened to. How did I stumble upon this? How did I stumble upon this? So a brand new case that everybody's heard about, the 20-year-old woman from Princeton that went missing a couple weeks ago, Mishrash Unetti, I believe is how you say her name. It's kind of like the Kylie Rodney case in that none of it makes sense, and I have a horrible feeling that it's gonna be a disgusting nightmare. I don't think it's going to be the disgusting nightmare that some people were kind of alluding to because she was part of this like food club and then she went missing and was dead. I don't think it's going to be like a cannibal thing. I really don't. It could be, but I think that it is going to be like a sexual assault kind of thing, and that she was missing, but like right behind the tennis courts in an area that's not like woods. Okay, not like woods. Um, and I'm just so sad for her and her family. So Mishrash Unetti is probably one that we're gonna want to dig into, in my opinion. Also, Sean Dougherty, which I'd been trying to not pay attention to because he's so little. He's 12 and a little 12 also. But a lot of the YouTubers that I follow have been following his case. And I think that one's going to be a huge, nasty mess too. For anybody who hasn't heard about Sean Dougherty, he was a 12-year-old in Virginia who was found hanging in his backyard by his sister. I don't know if the sister's older or younger. And I think it was this last March, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Um, so let me hit on one of the biggest ones that I probably will focus on somewhat, which is Kendrick Johnson. You guys have heard me mention him once or twice before. Um, his father has just put out a plea to try to get people like us to focus on their case. I think Kendrick was murdered 10 years ago, and it has some similarities to this case. So I think one of the things that sucks me into this case and sucks in some of the folks out there is the position of the law enforcement and authority and the connections and how the corruption can help people get away with murder. I mean, that's not acceptable, but it happens all the time. And Kendrick Johnson's case is a very good example of that. So, for people who don't know, Kendrick Johnson, I think, was in the state of Mississippi, going to high school. I think he was 14. I learned about him on Christina Randall's channel, and I was so grateful that she covered it. I was so grateful to learn about it because it is something that I didn't know anything about. And I was like, yeah, that needs to be known. Um, Somebody told me that Ashes to Ashes is a really good documentary about it. And I'm sure there's other resources. So please share if you know other resources for Kendrick Johnson. I think, especially because the family is begging people to focus on that case, that we, want to help them out. So they're a Black family, Kendrick Johnson, living in the South. Um, was unalived in the gymnasium in a big high school during school hours, like around 1:30 in the afternoon. And in this big high school, they had surveillance cameras everywhere, but the one that was looking in that direction in the gym was, of course, not in operating function that day. But unfortunately, there were some that were in operational function that show some things before going into the gym that show the foundation for a case of a cover up. And the number one suspect, or the number one person of interest in that case, a white boy, just happened to have a father in the FBI who has since been resigned and gotten a whole bunch of other people resigned because of the fuckery. Okay. So it ain't impossible to have these people brought to justice. Um, and then the girl that these boys were possibly, I suspect, fighting over, and the boy whose dad was formerly is formerly FBI, those two just got married this last summer, which means that she'll never be able to testify against him. And it also means that somebody who's going to do something like that is, in my opinion, a very, very dangerous person, and more than likely um, somebody who will commit domestic violence as well. So she'll never be able to testify against her husband if she's alive, but she especially won't be able to testify him if she's dead. That's what I'm saying. Allegedly, in my conspiracy theory opinion. Okay. Can't get past mom being mad at AWP. All of the people being mad at AWP. Thank you. I want to get back on Kylie Rodney because that's why we're here. So yeah, Squirrels on Fire. Are you still here? She might have had to run. The people being mad at AWP, they screwed everything up. They weren't supposed to go to Prosser, is what it sounds like. It sounds like they really stepped on some toes by operating the way they operate, which is that if they haven't cleared it, it hasn't been cleared. And that's a great way to operate. It's very professional. It's obviously, in this case, profoundly professional, because if they would have made an exception in this one case, like probably some folks were hoping they would, just imagine, the water's probably getting low enough right now that unless, maybe they were just hiding her there temporarily and they were then going to go hide her somewhere else. I mean, I don't know. I mentioned yesterday there can't be anything more stressful than trying to figure out what to do with the body. If you're ever in a situation like that, I would recommend having that part figured out before you get there. Of course, I'm being completely facetious, but sometimes you just got to make light of it. It's so horrible. And I also want to address my voice. You guys might have noticed yesterday, I kind of sounded like I was coming down with a cold when I was rewatching it. And I can explain I mentioned to you, for people that caught it, on Saturday, I went to one of the best volleyball games I've ever been to. It was such a close game. And me and my two daughters were so excited watching our good friend play and kick some butt. And we were yelling and hooting and hollering. I thought I was going to lose my voice, but that's what this is from. I think. I don't think I have allergies or, God forbid, a cold. My goodness, it's that time of year, though. So let me read some of your comments. I'm missing on so many of these great things. Kylie's grandpa wasn't connected to the water anymore. I think he was still. I think it's one of those things that you can't ever really get away from. That's my understanding. Just get okay. Cloning is a done deal. Of course, it's not talked about. It's effing with God, nature, the whole damn universe. Okay, Caroline. See, I know I'm very curious what you're talking about there. I'll figure it out later. I don't want to like scroll back unless people tell me that I really need to, just because I know you guys will keep coming out with more good comments. So I don't know what you're talking about with the cloning, and I'll look at that because that could be a thing, right? Man, there's a lot of wild stuff going on these days with even Squirrels on Fire was talking a lot yesterday about the clean energy versus the dirty energy, and that's a huge element of the industry. And these industries that say that they're into clean energy, what, like Exxon? Is Exxon into clean energy? I bet they are. AWP doesn't seem like the type of man that would back down from the situation. Must have been a heavy hand they went against. Oh, you're so cute. Squirrels on Fire. Thank you. We adore you, Jez. That is so sweet. So the heavy hand that they went against, there was something I was going to say there. Yeah, I wanted to dive right into the underwater footage. What I see in that blurry underwater footage, I don't see any clothes. I see like a naked body, but it's hard to see because it's underwater. And I have heard Michelle After Dark say that she's cleaned it up and she can see clearly, and she'll never say what she saw. And obviously, AWP knows what's on their tape because they taped it. Um, I'm very suspicious that she was found naked under the water. I'm just going to say it, and I would like to hear what your comments are about that. So, in my opinion, it's very, very likely that she was completely like in her birthday suit or close to it. Have y'all caught Kevin Neese's last video? You know, it's hard to keep up. I caught some of Kevin Neese's last videos last night. Like he had an 8-minute one, I think was the last one. And he was telling a story about trafficking. So I don't know if that's the one you're referring to or not. I think keeping last sighting at party site, limited scope, refocus area of search intentionally. She was placed there later. Right, right. And then, oh my goodness, Squirrels on Fire was on fire. I was watching this morning about the whole breakdown of the say what they say is that surveillance uh, footage screenshot of Kylie and just how photoshopped it is. And you did such good job breaking it down. Like I've always thought it looked photoshopped, but I just kind of didn't make too big of a deal about it. And I loved the way you were making a big deal about it because I never noticed like on her right shoulder how the strap of her bodysuit like totally doesn't match with where her bodysuit is on her body. Like right? I mean, everything in that photo is so weird. And I wrote down the name of the place that you said that you thought it was from, like a board shop, like a snowboarding, skateboarding type of shop, rather than the deli, the RV deli that they say. I say a well plotted crime scene. Beg to differ. AWP doesn't have all the answers. LD does. They literally said she was recognizable, so the autopsy is bullshit. Right. I know. It's crazy. Tony says no clothes. You know, I mentioned this a day or two ago. When the autopsy said there were no signs of sexual assault, I was just like, that is the one part of this autopsy that I'm just going to choose to go with because I can tell the whole thing's garbage. And I'm sure that part is garbage too, but I so badly wanted to just say, okay, let's just buy that and let's just, yeah, thank God, right? I mean, to me, it is the most disgusting thing in the world. It is absolutely disgusting. And I think it was Speaks Van Holding 24/7, etc. That was the first person that I heard put it out there in plain English. And I don't even like to say it. I don't even like to think it. But I think that she was multiple essayed. And who knows who knows? If there were people involved in that have a lot of power in that community, or their children were involved in that, it's gonna be really hard to ever get that to come to light. But you know, I think we can. I think it will. If it is, it will. And then they focused on her clothes and her sexually. Oh my God, it was so disgusting. I heard you mention that too, about how they, said neatly trimmed pubic area or something like that. It was just like, I know for a fact I have two autopsies in my possession that they didn't tell me anything about those people's pubic hairs. Ugh, that was so gross, and to me, it just felt like one last rape. I'm just gonna say it. It just felt like one last motherfuckers getting their rocks off by reading that and writing that, and it really sickened me. And I see Tony kind of has the same attitude. Couldn't do a full talk screen and autopsy of the brain, and they said that the brain was like totally trashed, so they couldn't do anything with it, except that they could tell that there were no concussions or anything like that. It was like, to me, that was utter crap. A dry drowning and you're not immersed in water, it's when your lungs fill up on the dry land, right? And that's why it's called dry drowning. Exactly, Rhonda R. And I did not even know that until this case. And I spoke with some first responders, some fire rescue squad people, and had it explained to me. Because yes, there is a drowning that can happen where your larynx closes up and water doesn't get into your lungs, but that's not dry drowning. Okay, that has some other name. Maybe people know what that is. So it is possible to have your like larynx spasm and for water to not get into your lungs, but it's still going to get in your nose and your ears and your stomach, because if your air pipe is closed, I mean, honestly, I don't know how all that stuff works. Anatomy's never been my thing. I've thought about learning it more better because, I know people who know their anatomy really well, and it's very cool to know your anatomy really well. I'm really starting to agree with the fighting over water sources and cartels. I watched an independent journalist talking about how the cartels have taken over the deserts of Southern California. Oh my God. And California has been in dire straits for water for decades. I remember back in the 80s or 90s, they were talking about building a giant pipeline down from Alaska to get water to LA. I'm just like, people, like, move to Alaska if you want their water. You're not going to be able to get a giant pipeline from Alaska to LA. I mean, unless you're Mark Zuckerberg or Hambrick or something. So I'm sure that's what they're working on. But I think you hit it right on the money, literally. I'm starting to agree with the fighting over the water and the cartels. So, Elliot Ness, we all know that name, right? Who busted up the mob scene in Chicago, probably Boston too. Um, but a lot of that mobster stuff is all about the water. I'm learning that new with this case. So, um, I mentioned early on a cute little cartoon called Rango that totally gets into the fuckery of it all. So it's a cute little cartoon for your kids, and it's a very intelligent movie about this type of gangster mobster stuff with water in the desert. Rango, I think, kind of summarizes the whole thing. But then I come to learn that a lot of non-animated gangster movies summarize the whole thing, because water is a huge thing for mafia. So I will never forget Jagger in one of his like tweets or something, and he's probably deleted it by now. But he had a comment where he said, "Does this get me into the trucking mafia?" or something like that. Does anybody else remember that? And I thought, yeah, Truckee Mafia, there you go. I'm sure there's truth to that joke. Muse News covered a lot of the water and all that stuff. She had like a 3-hour program on it. Awesome. I need to check that out because, yeah, I'm familiar with Muse News, if I'm saying her name right. And I need to follow up on that. Kiki Ray says cartels taking over would also equal complete silence from community because cartels threaten to K everyone, and I want to say to Kylie everyone, or to kill everyone, right? Although that's just my conspiracy theory opinion, allegedly. um, right? It's sort of like if you were paid off or threatened to keep your mouth shut about this case, you're never going to be able to tell anybody that you were paid off or threatened about this case, or you'll be dead. I mean, unalived, or Karen Silkwooded. The stuff is just gruesome. I mean, it's so much greed. It's just like there's not enough money or power in the world for these motherfuckers. It doesn't matter how much they have, they want it all, right? Superhero Loves Aikidas says there's a difference between a gag order and an NDA. There's no circumstances in Kylie Rodney case to support gag orders. Please don't state random assumptions as facts. I appreciate that comment, Superhero, because non-disclosure agreement is probably what AWP signed. And, you don't even have to give a gag order in a community like that. Everybody knows, just like everybody knows to unbutton their jacket and button their jacket when they're standing up and sitting down in court. Nobody has to say anything. And nobody will say anything in a lot of those situations because you just can't speak it. I mean, probably anybody who's been in an abusive relationship, an abusive household, a domestic violence type of relationship, I'm sure there's a lot of that too in daily life with things like that. Squirrels on Fire says, yes, he did. The cartels have huge growing operations set up out there. Right. Like the growth for the THC for marijuana stuff, because it's all legal. And yeah, it's big business. But remember too, somebody reminded me that the big business in Northern California of THC, medicinal marijuana, and recreational marijuana, that big business has been hit hard by all these other states legalizing it. I mean, I think it's legal in most states, like it's getting close to all states. I don't know. It's hard to keep up with because every state is trying to get in on it because they want the money, right? It's huge. But then when you're stepping on the toes of cartels, that's trouble. That is absolute trouble. It's very dangerous. I know Sammy's sister said she came home with wet clothes, Rhonda R says. I have heard that rumor, and I'm curious if Sammy's sister doesn't like her. Like, why would she put that information out there? And yeah, I've heard people say, oh no, it was so cold. She couldn't have come home with wet clothes. She would have froze to death. It's like, come on. Adrenaline heats you up and you can be cold and then get dry and get warm. I mean, you're not going to die when it's 50 degrees out and your clothes are wet, especially if your adrenaline's pumping. You're not even going to notice probably. I love Muse News. She's so cute and says, I'm just musing a lot. I love that. That used to be huge marijuana. Now it's legal. NDAs weren't signed. Many were gagged. Yes, in a large undocumented immigrant population, they're growers and workers. Very, very, very profound insight there, John Courtney. Thank you for saying that, because those are kind of like the invisible workers, the invisible enslavement that nobody ever talks about, and they're everywhere. I mean, that's in every community, and especially California. A lot of folks from Mexico and a lot of undocumented folks, so they don't want to be talked about. A case is still open per FBI. So long as case is open, the gag stays in place. They can keep this case open for 20 years till it becomes a cold one. I know this is a person who has been I know this as a person who has been issued a gag. Somebody eventually won't be able to live with the guilt. I had been in a court situation where the settlement included non-disclosure of anything for a given amount of time, and a lot of people would ask me about it, and I'd be like, "Oh, did you see the Mariners game last weekend?" I mean, it's pretty easy to keep your gag order or your non-disclosure agreement without indicating that you have anything like that. People really don't notice. Even if they're like pushing you and pushing you and pushing you and saying, "Wait, answer my question, please," you can still skirt around it, right? I mean, we're all crafty and creative. Because you can't say part of the gag order is you can't say you have a gag order. Yeah, it's crazy. Life is crazy. Get that. Get the feeling that the people at the top of this case have zero conscience. Absolutely. Yeah. A median for low temps was 65. Ah, good to know. Yeah, somebody said it was 50 that night. And I know out in the woods, especially high up in the hills, temperatures can change drastically. But in general, it sounds like it really doesn't get any hotter than 80 degrees in that area, even on like the hottest days of summer. And that the nights even in the summer can get cold, meaning like 45. And yeah, if you're thinking it's summer and you don't even have a hoodie with you, that's going to be freezing. If you have a hoodie, you'll be fine. um you know most teens are extreme. That would not have bothered them, right? And especially when you're high and drunk, like it heats up your body and you're not even paying attention. So, Placer is a dry county for recreational marijuana. Are you serious? That's a interesting tidbit. That's more than a tidbit. But again, dry county doesn't mean that it's dry. It just means that it's treated as such. It usually means that there's more of a bootleg operation going, right? From 8/4 to 8/12. Really interesting, Crystal McKenzie. Yeah, that is Pixie Knickers. How can we get a law passed called Kylie's Law that makes it a crime to cremate a person before the investigation is complete and to not let teens run an investigation and so on? Oh, I love that, Pixie Knickers. That is so astute of you. Um, yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I would imagine that the law enforcement was pushing to get that cremation done as quickly as possible, too. Um, you know, oh, do I even want to go here? I do, and I don't. Squirrels on Fire was talking about the possibility of Kylie's organs having shrunk in some heat and like drying out. And I don't think that that's possible. I don't think that it's possible to shrink to the extent that they're also small. That most of them are like a quarter the size of what they should be. The heart, the lungs, the brain was the only one that was anywhere close to the size that it should be. And they said it was 1,000 grams exactly. 1,000. Like, really? And then what was it? The liver they said was like 400, I think. No, more than that. Anyway, I don't have my numbers in front of me. It gets really confusing really fast, even with the numbers right in front of me. Anyway, other than the brain, all of the organs were like a quarter the size of what they should have been. And this is what I don't want to say, but I'm just going to spit it out and go ahead and crucify me. That might have been what was left of the organs, and I'm not talking about from being dried out. I don't need to go into it any more than that, do I? I hate to say this shit, but I think that it needs to be addressed. Um, so yeah, if part of her organs were stolen, and I won't even mention what for, because who knows? I don't know. I don't know if parts of her organs were stolen, and I don't know if it was to, you know, something that is done in Chinese medicine is that organs will be dried up and ground up and put in gel caps, and then people will take them for things like youth and vitality. And that's Chinese medicine. So we're not in China, right? I mean, I'm really into alternative medicine and acupuncture. I'm also very into Western medicine. Um, but a huge part of acupuncture is grinding up herbs, either making tea out of them or putting them in gel caps and taking them, just so that you get it into your system. But I know that there's a huge element of that is body parts of animals like tigers, and like specifically like scrotum of tigers, that's something that men like to consume, kind of like old school Viagra. It's so disgusting, but we know that there's a thing with the filthy rich, that they're trying to purchase eternal youth. So, going back to the comments back there about cloning and such, um, it's crazy. Where are we at? Are we at an hour and a half? I better wrap it up. I've just gone over the deep end, down the rabbit hole. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up. There might have been one or two things that I would like to toss into this one right before I do. Yes, let's talk about the homeschooling and the balance of homeschooling, because I might have sounded like I'm not a fan of homeschooling, and I am. I am a fan of it. I think that there's always going to be positive and negative to anything in life. But homeschooling is one of those things that I think can get a bad rap, and that there are so many benefits to it, and that kids can be extremely well adjusted and extremely well educated. I think a large element of any school, whether it's homeschooling or public schooling, is just the socialization and the friendships. That's such an important element that can be more challenging in some homeschool situations, but especially a homeschool situation when you might have 50 feet of snow and you're up on a mountaintop. So I just want to say that the challenges of Miss Kylie Rodney being homeschooled from the time she was 7 until her passing, um, is not so much just the fact that she was homeschooling. It's the fact that she was in a very remote, isolated situation that probably opened up the possibility for her to become such a talented musician. And so that's extremely positive. And yeah, and it is also just very, very challenging. I think I can speak for myself and a lot of us, that a lot of us were challenged to rejoin our society and our social skills just after a short duration of the stay-at-home orders with COVID. To me, social skills are a challenge, and they're something that I have to like refine day after day after day. And so missing a couple weeks really hurt me. Like, I forgot how to interact appropriately. I mean, I'm kind of being silly, but I'm also like just being honest. I think that I heard a lot of people saying that too. It wasn't just me. So, again, we had COVID there in Truckee, and we had lockdown, stay-at-home orders in California that were much more extreme than and much longer than the rest of the country. And if you were living out in a lodge up in the mountains, it probably wasn't even that different. It probably wasn't much different than regular life. But just to keep in mind the degree of the isolation, and also the degree of the financial impact, because a lot of people were negatively financially impacted by COVID, and some people came out ahead. We'll get into that in the next one. This has gone on for way too long already. I appreciate you guys so much. And thank you for letting me say all these crazy, scary things that I don't want to say that I think need to be said. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I found I didn't like people as much as I thought I did. Oh, that's great. I like to say that I rediscovered my inner introvert that I forgot all about. And I was very happy to become reacquainted with my inner self that is just a hermit and hates everybody. I like to say that very tongue in cheek, because I do love everybody too. But yeah, I love what you said, John. I found I didn't like people as much as I thought I did. I found that I had way too many social obligations, especially being a mother of 4. that was just ridiculous. I was just like spinning in circles every day. So for me, being on a stay-at-home order and just being in one place and focusing was such a relief and so rewarding. And ever since, I've been trying to figure out how I can keep that going, because now things are getting back to normal. And nah, no, thank you. I wasn't so happy with that old normal, and it's never going to be like that again. And I'm glad. And making more choices of how you want to live your life, and that you don't need to abide by imposed social obligations that you think are imposed on you, that you can identify that and say, yeah, no thanks. I love saying no thanks. Thank you, no thank you. Bye, Justice. Another great live. Thanks, you guys. As always, I like to remind myself and all of us to drink our water, eat our fruits and veggies and protein, get our exercise, be kind to ourselves, breathe, take it easy, be productive, and keep jerks out of your personal space, cyberspace, as well as physical space. So I will see you probably later today. Thanks again. I appreciate you guys tremendously. You are the bomb.